Also come to order. Reports of standing committees and divisions. A copy of this report has been placed on each member's desk. If there's no objection to the report, it will be adopted. Hearing no objection, the report is adopted. Representative Detmer, what purpose do you rise?
I rise personal privilege.
State your point of personal privilege.
Point of personal privilege. Can everybody hear me? Members, thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we know, this past weekend we had a ceremony out in Norfolk, Virginia, commissioning the USS Minnesota. And it's been nearly 100 years since we've had a boat, a ship, named after our state, our great state of Minnesota. In fact, this is the third time in history. Third time in history. The first was during the Civil War. The second one was in 1907. And now the USS Minnesota. A fast attack submarine, 237 feet long, 337 feet long, 137 crew members. In fact, if you would take your fist, hold your fist up, the nuclear material that is going to power that submarine for 25 years is just the size of your fist. Incredible. First of all, I would like to have those who attended the ceremony, please stand. Those who attended the ceremony, please stand. We had approximately 17 legislatures that came out, bipartisan, and we just had a great time watching these men and women serving our country. You can have a seat, please. Serving our country. And we have a special guest here that I'd like to introduce. Brian Scone is a co-chair, along with Dave Hutton, of the president, and he's also the president of the Twin City Council of the Navy League of the United States. He has traveled around the state of Minnesota raising funds for this commissioning ceremony. One thing that I would like to have the legislators here, I just submitted a bill, House File 3. If you would like to support the men and women that are serving on the USS Minnesota, monies that are used from this bill will help support this commissioning process, and also money that was collected from private businesses and corporations around the state is used for scholarships for the crew members' family. So this was a great opportunity for us to see the shipyard at Norfolk, and I would like to also recognize Representative Ernie Leidiger, who kind of headed this up. He's a Naval Academy graduate. He was in Cloud 9 while he was out there on the post. We also toured the aircraft carrier, the Theodore Roosevelt, and also another troop carrier, the Arlington. And the way we were treated by the men and women serving was just outstanding. Also, a lot of the photos, you can go to a website, and a lot of the photos that were prepared was by Representative Joe McDonald. But this is quite an experience for us. I don't think we'll ever see another time in our lifetime a boat named after the state of Minnesota, at least another 100 years. But thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to bring this to the attention of the body. Thank you.
Messages from the Senate.
Message from the Senate. Mr. Speaker, this is to notify you that the Senate is about to adjourn a special session sine die. Signed, Joanne M. Zoff, Secretary of the Senate. Mr. Speaker, I hereby announce the passage by the Senate of the following Senate file herewith returned. Senate File 1, an act relating to disaster assistance. Signed, Joanne M. Zoff, Secretary of the Senate.
First reading of Senate files.
Introduction and first reading of Senate File 1, an act relating to disaster assistance. Pursuant to Article 4, Section 19 of the Constitution of the State of Minnesota, Murphy E. moves that the rule therein be suspended an urgency be declared that the rules of the House be so far suspended that Senate File Number 1 be given its second and third reading and be placed upon final passage.
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I do move that we declare an urgency so we can take up Senate File 1 for the people of Minnesota.
Representative Daudt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I would strongly support and encourage members to support this motion. Obviously, we have a strong bipartisan record in the House of stepping up when our counties need this emergency disaster relief. So please support the motion.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion prevails. Second, the clerk will give the bill its second reading.
Second reading, Senate File 1.
Second reading. Clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, Senate File 1.
Third reading. Representative Poppe to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This is now Senate File 1. It is the disaster bill of this special session. It's our reason for being here. It is due to the storm damage that many counties in Minnesota felt during June 20th through the 26th of 2013. There was approximately $18 million in total damages. It was caused by windstorms, thunderstorms, torrential rain, hail, flooding, which resulted in downed trees, road being washed out, mudslides, and a major power outage, including 600,000 people at one point that were without power. In Benson of Swift County, 85 mile per hour winds, equivalent to a Hurricane 1 category storm, was felt. So it was quite a distressing time for many people. 23 counties in the state were impacted, but 18 counties met the damage threshold to meet the FEMA requirements. Again, the total damages approximately estimated at $18 million. This request is for $4.5 million, which is the 25% match that the state would offer. The 18 counties extended from Wilkin County in central western Minnesota to the southeasternmost county of Minnesota, Houston County. Each of the 18 counties reached the FEMA threshold, but the hardest hit was Houston County, which had damages of $6.5 million. And that's for a county that has roughly 19,000 residents, so the per capita loss is $339.55 per person. FEMA was declared, this disaster area was declared a major disaster declaration with President Obama on July 25th of 2013. It is a fairly straightforward disaster, and the request in this bill provides a $4.5 million state match to the FEMA funds. Section 1 of the bill appropriates the money as the match. Section 2 reduces the multiple 2012 disaster-related appropriations by $4.5 million so that it allows for this bill to be able to pay for our 25% match without taking money from the general fund. Section 3 deals with southwestern Minnesota and the winter storm aid that we previously had distributed. We are reallocating some of those dollars so that they can be grant-funded dollars to Rock County, Nobles County, and the city of Worthington. And the fourth section just deals with the enactment date, and that is the bill. I encourage a yes vote and ask for your support. Thank you.
Representative Anderson S.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Poppe, for bringing this bill forward today, because it's very important to, obviously, my legislative district. If you aren't familiar with the fact that Plymouth got hit hard by the storms here that happened in June, I'll never forget just sitting there that night as the storm kind of moved through Plymouth and looking outside the window and saying, this is not your typical summer storm. This is going to have some lasting damage for my legislative district. And unfortunately it did. And the next morning I spent some time going through the different neighborhoods and got a chance to meet with one constituent who had, actually it was a tree that was on city property that came across covered their entire backyard. punched out the holes in their basement window, and then their basement flooded. They had just remodeled their basement. It was really heartbreaking for them to see this kind of damage happen to them. And that was the case for many homes across the city of Plymouth, as well as our businesses and our public institutions that we have. In the Ways and Means Committee, I mentioned the fact that the school district of Wayzata, they have damages of around $300,000. One of their schools that they had been renovating received some flooding because of this storm too. So there's a lot of folks in my legislative district that were hit hard by this. I'm glad that we're able to come together for this legislative session to address these needs of these individuals and our community. But I also like to say that I wish that this session was handling more things, because it's not just about this issue, it's other issues that we have to deal with when it comes to the tax bill that passed during the last legislative session. But I do want to say again to Representative Poppe, I appreciate you putting this forward and getting relief to the folks that need it the most. Thank you.
Representative Hausman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. When this session was first proposed to us, it was going to be very clearly a one-day session to match FEMA aid, but only that. The bill does a little more than that. And I want to talk just a little bit about several of these things because in the interim and next year, I do believe we're going to be revisiting this issue, and I just want to get a couple of issues on the table. When I first saw the list of which counties were eligible, because I had seen what my neighborhood looked like and what my district looked like, I was shocked when Ramsey County wasn't on the list. And so I began to make some phone calls, and here is what I learned from the Ramsey County person. He said there's a disadvantage for a very small geographic county that is densely populated. It doesn't match, the FEMA formula doesn't work for it. And he said the city of Maplewood could be wiped off the face of the earth by a tornado and we wouldn't qualify. That caught my attention. And so I did a little more work. The threshold that Ramsey County would have had to meet was 1.7 million. We're 280,000 short of that. But to talk about individual cities, the city of St. Paul has 667,000. The city of Roseville has 475,000. Maplewood has 145,000. New Brighton has 109,000. He pointed out that some of these cities in Ramsey County that have damage of 100,000, for them it's going to have a huge impact. And he said, in the past, FEMA would consider some contiguous counties as eligible for partial relief, but those days are long gone. The storm damages will have fiscal repercussions for the affected communities and the county as a whole for years to come. Then I began to hear at our working group that school districts were a little confused, and so I contacted some of my school districts. And I was told by the St. Paul School District, yes, they had storm damage, yes, they called in companies to deal with this, yes, they had the amount, but then she said, we are self-insured, the deductible was too high, we paid for it ourselves. And she added, the school district didn't know they were supposed to report this to Ramsey County. And then I called Roseville. And Roseville said, we did it in-house. We had our people clean up the debris. I asked in this morning's Ways and Means Committee, is that a quantifiable amount? Are there cities and counties who actually quantify state or public employee time? They said yes. So there is a lot of misunderstanding as we gather these damages. What we saw in the case of the ice storm, which this bill also deals with, is that some of the cities came back to us and they said that bill that you passed the last night of the session didn't quite work for us. And in one case, they said there are 58 trees to remove on this street, there are 60 trees to remove on this one, 50 trees here, and then they summarized what they felt still needed to be done. 268 trees, labor and watering, cleanup, stump grinding, fill, dirt, grass seed, sales tax. That's what they were proposing hadn't yet been covered. The other one said, many expenses have been determined as ineligible from FEMA, but are a result of the storm that occurred April 9 to 11. Our unmet, unreimbursed expenditures, as you will see, generally fall within the categories of addressing proper pruning of trees to prevent disease potential and promote healthy healing, stump removal, non-FEMA eligible labor, replacement trees, generator fuel, and they added those up, additional tree trimming, replacement trees, etc. Those are non-FEMA eligible. We are helping those communities in this bill. We are not the only ones. I don't know if Representative Bly is going to give his example, but there are other examples around the state. Disaster relief isn't necessarily fair. It doesn't necessarily treat all affected communities in the same way because of formulas, etc. But here is what my Ramsey County disaster relief person told me. There are groups that know about this, and he said the Association of Minnesota Emergency Managers has asked for a disaster assistance fund if a county falls just short of federal disaster standards. So it is already on their radar screen. But I thought I would at least need to call attention to one community, and I brought the Pioneer Press from 7/12, and it talks about the last of the tree debris. And the first two paragraphs say, if tree debris removal were a battle, the east side of St. Paul would have won. More than 500 trees on public property and more on private land fell during a series of storms. I mention this to you that as all of this will be, there will be zero reimbursement. We don't have a sense in which there should be some phasing in. So those that met the threshold, we cover 100%. FEMA does 75%, and the state in this bill is doing 25%. We make no local burden. But for those just under the threshold, they will have zero help, and those property taxpayers will bear that burden. And in some of the small cities, that can affect them for some time. So members, I hope that this is always seen as a kind of a noble purpose, but it is certainly not simple, and I hope we spend some time in the interim in saying, is there a better way to get this right?
Representative Erdahl.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. And perhaps just following up a little bit with what Representative Hausman was talking about regarding some future needs that we need to look at. But before I get into that, I am glad that we are meeting today to meet the disaster needs of 18 counties in Minnesota. McLeod County, that I represent a portion of, is in the disaster list, as in Stearns County, that I do not represent. However, Meeker County is greatly affected by some of the disasters in Stearns County. The problem that I just briefly want to address is that we do have other unmet needs for next session besides what Representative Hausman was saying. Under current law, municipally owned utilities are eligible for aid. Cooperative owned utilities are not. We need to address this disparity in the future.
Representative Hertaus.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I also wanted to just express how grateful I am for this opportunity to provide disaster relief to the members of my district. 8 of 11 communities were hit hard by this storm. And although I'm grateful for this, I'm also disappointed. And I'm disappointed for the missed opportunity that we would have here to also provide relief for the rest of Minnesotans with regard to disaster relief. Mother Nature hit 18 counties with a natural disaster, but the majority in this House hit all 87 counties with a disaster in the omnibus tax bill. And $6.12 billion of all fund spending increases in taxes is the largest in Minnesota history. It also is equal to 1/3 of all of the tax increases in all of the states in the nation combined. And business and investment capital needs some economic certainty in order to grow our economy. And I respectfully request that when we re-adjourn in February, that we make it a priority to provide business and capital with those opportunities to grow our economy, which this tax bill has really been to the detriment of the employees that they employ. Thank you.
Representative Bly.
Thank you, Speaker. And I want to thank the members and the committee chairs and all and staff who've worked on this bill. It's an important bill, and it's important that we meet the needs of those who've met with this disaster, the storm disaster. I wanted to speak to, in following remarks that Representative Hausman made, that in my own district, not the same storm, but it points to the difficulty that counties face when they cannot get that federal designation. On July 13th, Rice County and a small portion of Goodhue County suffered a storm that lasted 4 to 5 hours and has caused now about $2.5 million in damages. It's something that I'm going to have to pursue in order to help them in the following session. But they have concerns about emergency needs. There are roads that are damaged. There are other transportation issues that in the coming winter will only make transportation of bus routes and other kinds of needs much more difficult, if not impossible. So if we can get some kind of help or assistance, if anyone has any suggestions for me about what to follow, I'd really appreciate that. But I recognize that because of the federal designation and the way that the feds do provide this kind of help, it does not meet the needs of my county, and it's something that if there's a way to address it, we need to. Thank you.
Representative Davids.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. We are here today to pass a disaster relief bill, and on behalf of the residents of Fillmore and Houston counties, I would simply like to thank the entire legislature when they put that green vote up here in a few minutes. I'd also like to thank the township officers, the county commissioners, city officials, school district officials that were there so quick after this disaster happened. The day after the disaster, I took a tour of the district and saw the devastation, saw businesses floating down the Root River, literally, seeing roads that were washed out, bridges that were washed out. The hardest hit county in the state for this bill was Houston County. Fillmore and Houston counties together are about 46.5% of the total $18 million. So I felt it necessary to stand up today and simply thank the members of this body. Special thank you to Chair Poppy, my good neighbor to the west, Chair Carlson for your hearings with the Ways and Means Committee, and all the members of the Ways and Means Committee for their work. I would like to also thank Representative Gene Pulowski for his work on Chapter 12A and for the work he did back in the 2007 flooding of Rushford and Houston and Hoka in southeastern Minnesota. Now, since 1991, as a member of this House, I've seen many disaster bills, many special sessions, and I would just as soon not be included, because that means I didn't get hit as a rule. Now, Representative Hausman brings up a very, very good point that I think we need to, as we discuss this in the next session, we need to take a closer look at that. And Representative Bly, when you have a real intense disaster, but it still doesn't qualify because it doesn't meet the state threshold, that's something we have to work with our federal officials on to see if we can come up with some different ways to handle that, because they are devastated nonetheless. So after driving around and having to take many detours because the bridge was out, I'll tell you what, the disaster folks in Fillmore and Houston counties were so fast. They had the bridges blocked off, they had the roads blocked off. Public safety was the first priority, and they came through and did their job. The local officials did their job. Members, now it's our time to do our job, and that's pushing a green button here. If you come down to Fillmore and Houston counties, these people immediately started on the recovery, but they do need some help. They do need some help. So for me, it's 18 counties out of the 87 that are here today. As I said, I've been here many years when it was various other counties, and this is one thing that is so important, because we will come together, Republicans and Democrats today, and do the right thing. And I'd also like to thank Leader Doudt for his leadership, Mr. Speaker. I thank you for your leadership on this issue, and this should go up 134-0 green. Thank you, members.
Representative Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. You know, one of the points that I would like to make is we talk about the 75% from the federal government, 25% from the state, but we are not bringing these cities back whole again. You know, you take a look at one of the cities in the county that I represent, the district that I'm fortunate to represent, and they have another $1 million worth of cost, and they have a $3 million levy. And so it's extremely difficult for these cities to pick up those additional costs. And we're talking about, it was brought up about the trees, but there was other things about the additional labor that they had to help clean up and running the backup generators for 3 days when they're without power. So I think it's right that we should be addressing this as a whole and seeing what we could do, because it is unfortunate that there are some unmet needs as well in these communities that don't necessarily, can receive this. So I want to thank everybody for having this language in here. Chair Carlson, thank you so much for the call back as well, so we get clarification on some of the questions that we had. So I appreciate the support. Thank you.
Representative Zellers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members, and I too here to support not only the relief that has been provided in the past, but in a situation here where many Minnesotans are able to come together. We've done this in the past, in election years, non-election years, spring, summer, almost winter and fall. It makes me proud as a Minnesotan to see us come together. I will have just one brief contradiction maybe, Mr. Speaker. There's an opportunity today that I think we're not taking advantage of, and that is to correct some of the things that many of us in this chamber agree with. Even the governor agreed to when he talked about repealing the tax on farm credits or farm service repair. This is something that's affecting Minnesotans all across the state. Just like these disasters that happen and need to be corrected as quickly as possible, the indecision and the complication that this is bringing to our state's economy are costing our fellow Minnesotans jobs. Equipment's going to be taken across, farm equipment's going to be taken across state lines, fixed in neighboring states. People are driving across other parts of our state, leaving our state to purchase their goods and their services because of some of the taxes that were raised in this last session. This was an opportunity to come together, which, again, I've read many of the clips from many of the people on both sides of the aisle about fixing this man-made disaster that's not going to be addressed here today. Now, I'm probably going to vote for the bill today, make sure we get the relief to all of those that need it. Maybe there's some room for improvement, Representative Hausman, on how it's handled and where it's given, but there was an opportunity here to come together on a bipartisan basis to fix some of these other taxes that are going to cost our fellow Minnesotans jobs. It's going to make our economy more uncertain. It's going to lead to a slowing of our economy. It was a missed opportunity today, members. Hopefully in the next legislative session we'll be able to take these issues on. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Doudt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for working together to provide this needed disaster relief. More than 600,000 homes and businesses throughout Minnesota lost electricity because of these storms, making this the largest power outage in state history. Widespread road closures caused by flooding and debris isolated entire cities. We have a rich tradition of support in Minnesota for supporting these kinds of communities in times of need, and today is no different in that respect. However, this is a missed opportunity to clean up Democrats' man-made disaster. We have a new tax on warehousing, we have a new tax on telecommunications equipment, and we have a new tax on commercial equipment repair. In June, Republicans called on Governor Dayton and Democrat leaders to call a special session to repeal these taxes. Speaker Thiessen's response? He said the public has experienced enough special sessions in past years, and we do not need another. Mr. Speaker, as of today, you'll need a new excuse. Back in May, 69 Democrats voted in favor of $2.1 billion in new taxes, and 61 Republicans stood united with hardworking taxpayers in opposition to these new taxes. When session adjourned sine die and members returned to their districts, I noticed that many Democrats seemed to have a change of heart. Even Governor Dayton, when facing Minnesotans at public functions, reversed his support for some of these damaging tax increases. This special session was Governor Dayton and Democrats' opportunity to make good on their statements and ensure that their actions matched their words. We're all here, and today you had a chance to correct your mistakes. And Democrats, you have absolute, complete control of state government in Minnesota. You have no excuse to make hardworking taxpayers wait even one more day. If Minnesota loses one employer or one job because you failed and delayed in repealing your mistakes, it's one too many. Minnesota's economy and hardworking Minnesota families can't afford to pay for your mistakes.
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members, and I want to begin by thanking everybody for being here today, of course, for the state of Minnesota and for the people and for disaster relief. When I was a first grader and going to school in New Hope, there was a tornado that came through that neighborhood, and it knocked the home that I lived in off its foundation, blew the garage right off into the cornfield behind us. And we all know the power of storms in Minnesota, the destructive force that they can have, not only on our property, but on the lives of people. And it has been our tradition here to come together when that happens to bring relief to the counties, to local units of government, and certainly to the people of Minnesota, and today is no different. As I have been out talking with Minnesotans this summer about the work that we did this session, about the progress that we made for Minnesota in balancing the budget for the first time in a long time, making sure that we were talking with Minnesotans about the historic investments that we've made in education to reduce people's property taxes, Minnesotans have been very happy to know that this legislature, and I've talked often about this legislature being a real workhorse for the people of Minnesota, that we set aside a lot of our political, ideological differences and focused on the work that we needed to do for the people of Minnesota, the priorities for the people of Minnesota, and today is just like that. Today we are together again doing the work of the people of Minnesota, setting aside, mostly, our ideological differences so that we can do the work for the people of Minnesota as they've asked us to do it. We're doing it efficiently and pretty calmly today, too, I'd like to say, which is great. As I have thought about the work that we did last session and what I see in the Minnesota that we love, I'm seeing real progress for the state of Minnesota. The economy continues to grow. We're starting to see large companies, small companies, growing again in Minnesota, coming to Minnesota to do business. We're seeing Moody's rating us again, AAA rating, because we balanced the budget for real, and they don't anticipate another deficit. We're seeing real growth in Minnesota, and Minnesotans are feeling optimism as a result of that. We've got a real pep in our step. And so when I hear a little bit of the doom and gloom coming from the other side about the state of the economy in the state of Minnesota, I say I don't think Minnesotans are feeling that. And I hope we're not going to push them in that direction, because we all need that pep in our step to see Minnesota's economy continue to grow. I know that there are concerns being expressed about some of the taxes that were raised in this last session. And I want to tell you, just like I have seen this legislature perform as a workhorse, thoughtfully, considering issues, I am watching our members do that very same thing around these issues, dealing with the warehouse tax and the farm equipment repair tax. When leaders got together to talk about the scope of this session, there was some talk, there was some discussion about whether or not we should consider those issues in this session, but there was no agreement, because the issue that came forward from my Republican colleagues was, let's repeal but not figure out how to pay for them. And that is the history of the last decade. Short-term solutions without a real way to pay for it. And as our kids are going back to school, that's not the kind of math that they need to learn. That's not the kind of math that they're going to learn in our schools. If you want to repeal a tax, you got to pay for it. There was no agreement among the leaders to make that happen for this special session, and that's why we're not dealing with it today. But people like Representative Lori Halverson, Representative Jay McNamara, and others are doing the work to understand what it's going to take to consider that if that's the course we choose to take next session. We'll have the benefit of a forecast in November. Hey, Representative Franson. We'll have the benefit of a forecast in November and another one in February. We'll have the benefit of understanding the growth of our economy, and we will make thoughtful decisions for the future of Minnesota. That is the legacy of this legislature. We're going to continue on that course. I'm glad we're here together dealing with disaster relief for the people of Minnesota. I hope everyone votes aye. Thank you.
Representative Poppe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Today we are taking care of the needs of the people in 18 counties throughout our state. And those do include counties that may be near and dear to many of us, including the county of Houston, which is my home county. And I appreciate what Representative Davids said about the people of Houston and Fillmore County. That would be true of all of the people that are being impacted by these disasters and those that we are helping today. So I appreciate the support. When we put politics aside and people first, we do what's right. Today we have the opportunity to do what's right, what's important, and what we know to be the fair thing to do from the perspective that we have before us. We haven't solved all the problems, but we are taking care of the people in 18 counties, and that's important. And so today I ask you to vote yes. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. There being 127 ayes and 1 nay, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Motions and resolutions. There are copies of the non-controversial motions online. If there's no objection, we'll take action on those motions first. Hearing no objection, those motions are adopted.
Murphy moves that the chief clerk be and is hereby instructed to inform the Senate and the governor by message that the House of Representatives is about to adjourn this 2013 special session, sine die.
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. We're just letting the Senate and the governor know that it is our intention to adjourn sine die.
All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion prevails. Representative, there's another motion.
Murphy moves that the chief clerk be and is hereby authorized to correct and prove the Journal of the House 2013 session for today, Monday, September 9th, 2013, and that he be authorized to include in the Journal for today any subsequent proceedings.
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. We're just authorizing the chief clerk to correct any errors, and I ask for your vote.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion prevails. Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I move that the House do now adjourn this special session sine die.
Representative Murphy moves the House adjourn this special session sine die. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The motion prevails. This special session is adjourned sine die.